Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku stopped doubting himself. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. Part 1. The Weight of Rot. The smell of Dagoba Municipal Beach Park was not just the scent of garbage. It was the scent of failure. It was a pungent, salty mixture of rusted metal, rotting kelp, waterlogged tires, and the distinct, sulfurous odor of neglect. For the residents of Mizurufu, this place was a blind spot, a stain on the coastline they had collectively agreed to ignore. For Izuku Midoriya, it was hell. It had been 3 weeks since the sludge villain incident. 3 weeks since the impossible happened. 3 weeks since the number one hero, All Might, had pointed a skeletal finger at him and whispered the words that had rewritten the genetic destiny of his soul. You too can become a hero. But right now, shivering in the biting winds of early March, Izuku felt less like a hero and more like a beast of burden breaking under the yoke. Young Midoriya, put your back into it. The fridge isn't going to move itself. All Might stood atop a precarious pile of crushed sedans and old office furniture in his buff form, posing dramatically against the morning sun. To anyone else, he looked like a god of strength. To Izuku, whose hands were currently bleeding through his cheap work gloves, he looked like a drill sergeant from a nightmare. Izuku gripped the rusted underside of a massive, industrial refrigerator. It was half buried in the sand, anchored by years of tidal shifting. He gritted his teeth, his sneakers digging into the loose grit. Heave. Nothing happened. The fridge remained stubborn, an immovable object mocking his very existence. I can't, Izuku wheezed, his voice cracking. He let go, falling to his knees in the cold sand. His breath came in ragged, white puffs. It's too heavy. I'm not strong enough yet, All Might. Maybe the schedule is wrong. Maybe I'm not ready for the heavy lifting yet. I should act as a support. Maybe I misunderstood. The muttering started. It was a defense mechanism, a spiraling vortex of verbal anxiety that Izuku used to buffer himself against the reality of failure. I mean, looking at the muscle density required to move 200 kilograms in sand, the coefficient of friction is too high against my current BMI. If I injure my lumbar spine now, I'll be out of commission for weeks, and then the exam will come, and I'll fail, and I'll have wasted your time, and— Stop. The voice didn't boom like a Texas smash. It cut through the air like a guillotine. Izuku froze. The muttering died in his throat. He looked up. All Might had descended from his perch. He wasn't in his buff form anymore. In a burst of steam, he had reverted to his true form, the gaunt, skeletal figure with sunken eyes and sharp angles. But there was no softness in his expression today. There was no pity. Toshinori Yagi looked down at his successor, and his electric blue eyes were cold. Stand up, Midoriya. Izuku scrambled to his feet, wiping the sand from his knees, trembling. I am sorry, All Might. I just meant that logically. Logically, you are looking for an excuse to fail, Toshinori said. His voice was quiet, deadly serious. You are looking for the exit door before you've even entered the room. Izuku flinched as if struck. No. I want this. I want to be a hero. Do you? Toshinori stepped closer, his shadow engulfing the small, green-haired boy. Because for the last 10 minutes, I haven't heard a future hero. I've heard a victim. I heard a boy explaining to me, in great detail, why he isn't good enough. Toshinori sighed, the sound rattling in his damaged lungs. He gestured to the mountain of trash looming over them. This garbage, young Midoriya? It is just matter. It is physics. Heavy, yes. Disgusting, yes. But it has no will. It cannot defeat you. Only you can defeat you. Toshinori placed a large, bony hand on Izuku's shoulder. He didn't squeeze, but the weight of it felt heavy. I chose you. Out of everyone in this world, pros, students, people with quirks that could split the sky, I chose a quirkless boy who ran into a fire to save a bully. I bet everything I have left on you. He leaned down, bringing his face level with Izuku's. So when you doubt yourself, when you mutter about how you can't or how weak you aren't just insulting yourself. You are insulting my judgment. You are telling me that the symbol of peace made a mistake. The silence that followed was louder than the crashing waves. Izuku's eyes widened. The words pierced through the layers of anxiety he had wrapped around his heart for a decade. Insulting him. Doubt, All Might whispered, tapping Izuku's chest, right over his heart, is the rust of the soul, Midoriya. It corrodes the steel before the battle even begins. This trash on the beach? We can clear it, but if you don't clear the trash in your head, One for All will crush you. Not because your body is weak, but because your will is brittle. All Might straightened up, turning his back. Take 5 minutes. Decide if you want to be the hero I saw that day, or if you want to be the victim the world tells you to be. I won't train a victim. The skeletal man walked away, heading toward the seawall to cough up blood in private, leaving Izuku alone with the refrigerator. Part 2, The Shift. Izuku stared at the refrigerator. The rust flaked off under his gaze. It was ugly. It was heavy. You are insulting my judgment. Izuku looked at his hands. They were trembling. Why? Fear? Fatigue? Habit? For 10 years, the world had told him he was nothing. Deku. The wooden doll. The useless one. He had internalized it so deeply that it had become his baseline frequency. Even now, offered the greatest power in the world, his first instinct was to apologize for existing. He chose me. The thought wasn't a question anymore. It was a data point. Izuku Midoriya was an analyst. He dissected hero fights, quirk interactions, and villain psychology. He prided himself on logic. So, he applied logic to the situation. Premise 1. All Might is the greatest hero in history. Premise 2. All Might does not make tactical errors. Premise 3. All Might chose me. Conclusion. I am worthy. If he denied the conclusion, he had to deny premise 1 or 2. And Izuku would sooner die than call All Might a fool. The trembling in his hands stopped. Something in his chest, a tight knot of anxiety that had been there since his 4th birthday, began to loosen. It didn't disappear. Anxiety was a chemical ghost, but it changed. It calcified. It hardened into something usable. If All Might believed in him, then Izuku's self-doubt was factually incorrect. And Izuku hated being wrong. He walked back to the refrigerator. He didn't grab it immediately. He stopped. He breathed. He looked at the sand. The friction is the problem, his mind supplied, but this time the voice wasn't frantic. It was cold. Calculating. The sand is loose. I lose 30% of my force to slippage. I don't need to be stronger. I need to be smarter. Izuku looked around. He saw a flat sheet of corrugated metal and 2 lengths of PVC pipe sticking out of a junk pile. He grabbed the metal sheet and shoved it under the front edge of the fridge. He jammed the pipes underneath the metal. A primitive roller system. He walked to the back of the fridge. He didn't heave blindly this time. He planted his feet, digging his heels down until they hit the firmer, wet sand beneath the dry top layer. He bent his knees. He aligned his spine. Doubt is rust, he whispered. He pushed. The fridge groaned. The metal sheet slid over the sand. The pipes rolled. The object moved, not an inch, but a foot. Then 2. Izuku kept pushing. His muscles burned, screaming with lactic acid, but he didn't apologize to them. He commanded them, move. We have work to do. When All Might returned 10 minutes later, expecting to find a crying boy or a resigned one, he stopped in his tracks. The refrigerator was at the top of the pile near the truck. Izuku was already halfway back down the beach, dragging a rusted engine block on a makeshift sled made of a car hood. The boy wasn't muttering. His mouth was set in a hard, grim line. His eyes were focused on the horizon. All Might smiled, a small, genuine quirk of the lips. Well then, Part 3, The Analyst. The change wasn't overnight, but the trajectory shifted instantly. Month 2. Izuku walked into the staff room of Aldera Junior High to hand in a career form. The teachers usually looked at him with a mix of pity and annoyance. Midoriya, his homeroom teacher, sighed, looking at the paper. You still put UA High School. Look, be realistic. I am being realistic, sensei, Izuku interrupted. He didn't shout. He didn't look at his shoes. He looked the teacher in the eye, his posture straight. My mock exam scores are in the top 5% of the prefecture. My tactical analysis essays were graded perfect. UA has a general department, and a support department, even if heroics were impossible. Denying my application based on quirk status alone is a violation of the Equal Education Act. The teacher blinked, stunned. The stutter was gone. The chaotic waving of hands was gone. Well, yes, but please process the application. Thank you. Izuku bowed, a sharp, respectful 45 degrees, and walked out. In the hallway, Katsuki Bakugo was waiting. He leaned against the lockers, small explosions popping in his palms. He had smelled the change in the air, like a predator sensing a shift in the wind. Deku, Bakugo growled. You're still applying? Do you want to die that badly? Canonically, Izuku would have flinched. He would have raised his hands. He would have stammered out a justification. Instead, Izuku stopped. He adjusted his backpack strap. He looked at Bakugo, really looked at him. He saw the excellent posture, the reactive twitch of the deltoids, the nitroglycerin sweat glistening on his palms. Right hook dominance, Izuku analyzed instantly. Over-reliance on intimidation. Guard is open on the left when he yells. I'm applying, Kaken, Izuku said calmly. Bakugo pushed off the wall, stepping into Izuku's personal space. Don't ignore me, you pebble! I told you to take a swan dive. I heard you, Izuku cut him off. His voice was flat. It was bad advice. I discarded it. Bakugo's face went slack with shock. You have a powerful quirk, Kaken. You're going to be a great hero, Izuku continued, stepping around him. But you have terrible situational awareness if you think I'm the same person I was last year. Izuku walked away. He could feel Bakugo's eyes boring into his back, could hear the crackle of explosions, but he didn't turn around. He had a beach to clean. Part 4 Optimization, Month 5. All Might, this meal plan is inefficient. Toshinori choked on his water. They were sitting on the tailgate of his truck. The beach was now 40% clear, revealing patches of golden sand that hadn't seen the sun in decades. Excuse me? All Might coughed. This is the aim to pass, American Dream Plan. It's designed to maximize bulk. It's designed for a metabolic type similar to yours, Izuku said, tapping a notebook with a pen. He wasn't taking notes on All Might anymore. He was taking notes on himself. You're naturally mesomorphic. I'm ectomorphic. Eating this much raw protein without a complex carbohydrate vehicle is just stressing my kidneys. I'm sluggish during the afternoon sprints. Izuku turned the notebook around. It was a spreadsheet. A terrifyingly detailed spreadsheet. I've adjusted the caloric intake based on my daily burn rate. I've also reorganized the trash clearing schedule. We've been clearing randomly. If we use a grid system, clearing the larger debris first to create pathways for the smaller debris, we can reduce transit time by 18%. All Might stared at the notebook, then at the boy. The hero worship was still there in Izuku's eyes, but it had evolved. It was no longer the worship of a fan for an idol. It was the respect of a student for a master, a student who was starting to ask hard questions. You optimized the training montage? All Might asked, bewildered. I have 10 months to catch up to people who have been training for 10 years, Izuku said, closing the book with a snap. I don't have time for inefficiency. Also, about One for All. Yes? You said it's an energy stockpile? Does it function like a battery or an engine? Do I draw from it, or do I channel it? Because if I channel it, the bottleneck will be my joints. If I draw from it, the bottleneck is my stamina. All Might's sweat dropped. It's a feeling. You clench your buttocks and yell smash. Izuku stared at him. Okay. So you're an instinctual user. You don't actually understand the mechanics. All Might felt a metaphysical arrow pierce his chest. I was a natural. That's fine, Izuku said, standing up and stretching his quads. I'll figure it out. But we need to incorporate joint strengthening exercises immediately. If I receive a power output of 100% through a vessel conditioned for 10%, I will explode. I need to increase the vessel's density. He picked up a car tire. Let's go. Break is over. Part 5, The Mother, Month 8. The transformation was physical now. The soft, doughy look of Izuku Midoriya was gone. In its place was whipcord muscle, defined abs, and calloused hands. But the biggest change was in the apartment. Inko Midoriya watched her son eat dinner. He was eating fast, methodical bites of grilled chicken and rice. He was reading a textbook on advanced structural integrity in urban environments. Izuku? He looked up. His eyes were bright, alert. Yes, Mom? Inko fidgeted with her napkin. She had been worrying for months. He came home dirty, exhausted, smelling of the ocean. But he didn't come home sad. He hadn't cried in weeks. It was unnerving. Are you sure about Yue? I know you're working hard, but... She teared up. The old guilt surfaced. I just don't want to see you get hurt. I don't want you to be crushed when you fail. She didn't say it, but the words hung in the air. Old Izuku would have panicked. He would have rushed to comfort her, apologizing for making her worry, internalizing her doubt as his own. New Izuku put down his chopsticks. He stood up and walked around the table. He knelt beside her chair and took her hands. His grip was firm, rough with the evidence of his labor. Mom. Look at me. Inko looked at him. She saw his father's jawline starting to emerge, but his eyes were all her. I'm not going to be crushed, Izuku said. His voice was gentle, but it had the density of iron. I know you're scared. You're scared because you think I'm weak. You think the world is too big for me. I just want you to be happy, she sobbed. I am happy, Izuku said. And he smiled. It wasn't the trembling, watery smile he used to give her. It was a blinding, radiant thing. For the first time in my life, Mom, I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to be a hero. Not just a hero, I'm going to be the best. I'm going to be the one who makes sure no one else has to be scared. He squeezed her hands. You don't have to believe in me yet. That's okay. I have enough belief for both of us right now. Just watch me. Inko stared at him. The little boy who needed protecting was gone. A young man was kneeling in her kitchen. She wiped her eyes. Okay, Izuku. I'll watch. Part 6, The Roar. The morning of the entrance exam. February 26th. The sun was rising over the horizon, painting the water in hues of violent orange and purple. There was no trash, not a scrap, not a bottle cap, not a rusted bolt. Dagoba Municipal Beach Park was pristine. The white sand stretched for miles, pristine and beautiful. The sunrise glinted off the water, unobstructed by the mountains of debris that had choked it for years. In the center of the clean expanse stood a pyramid. Izuku hadn't just moved the trash to the designated collection point. He had stacked it. He had organized the final load of massive debris into a stable, towering ziggurat near the road, ready for the municipal trucks. And on top of that pyramid stood Izuku Midoriya. He was shirtless, his skin bronzed by months of sun, his muscles coiled and defined. He wasn't panting. He was breathing deep, lung-filling drafts of clean ocean air. He looked down at his hands. They were scarred, rough, and strong. Oh my goodness! All Might rolled up in his truck, jaw dropping as he took in the sight. He stepped out, almost tripping over his own oversized feet. You didn't just clean it. You finished early. And, my God, look at the beach. Izuku jumped down. It was a 20-foot drop. He landed in a crouch, the sand poofing around his sneakers, absorbing the impact perfectly. He stood up. It's done, All Might. All Might looked at the boy. The vessel was ready. It wasn't just physically ready, the spirit inside was blazing. There was no hesitation in Izuku's posture. All Might pulled a hair from his head. The moment was upon them. I said I'd give you my power at the exam, All Might said, his voice thick with emotion. But you've surpassed my expectations. You didn't just clear the path, you built a new one. He held out the hair. This is it, young Midoriya. The torch is passed. Eat this. It was a ridiculous instruction. Canonically, Izuku panicked. Here, Izuku looked at the hair. He nodded solemnly. He understood the biology, DNA transfer, the ritual, and the trust. Thank you, Izuku said. I won't waste it. He took the hair and swallowed it without flinching. He waited. I don't feel anything, Izuku noted clinically. It takes a few hours to digest and integrate into your metabolic system, All Might explained, shifting back into buff form for the final send-off. By the time the practical exam starts, you will be a vessel for one for all. All Might placed a hand on Izuku's head, ruffling the green curls. Go, Izuku Midoriya. Go and show them the result of your work. Go and be the hero. Izuku grabbed his yellow backpack. He turned to the city. Yes, sir. Part 7. The Gate. The entrance to UA High School was a massive glass and steel archway, a monument to the superhuman society. Students were flooding in, hundreds of them, all with amazing quirks, all buzzing with nervous energy. Izuku walked among them. He didn't look at the ground. He looked at the structure of the gate, admiring the architectural reinforcement required to withstand potential quirk accidents. He didn't trip. He was too balanced for that now. He saw the uneven pavement stone that had tripped him in another life, and he stepped over it fluidly. Out of my way, Deku. The growl came from behind. Izuku stopped and turned. Bakugo was there, hands in his pockets, his face twisted into its permanent scowl. He expected Izuku to jump, to squeak, to scramble out of the path. Izuku stood his ground. The crowd parted around them, sensing the tension. Good morning, Kakin, Izuku said pleasantly. Bakugo's eye twitched. Don't good morning me. Why aren't you shaking? Why aren't you crying? You're walking into a slaughterhouse without a quirk. I should kill you right now to save you the embarrassment. I appreciate your concern, Izuku said, and the dryness of his tone made Bakugo stiffen. But I have an exam to pass. Izuku checked his watch. And so do you. We're blocking the flow of traffic. It's inefficient. He turned his back on Katsuki Bakugo. Bakugo froze. His brain short-circuited. For 10 years, the dynamic had been predator and prey. But the prey just checked its watch and called him inefficient. Don't you turn your back on me. Bakugo roared, lunging forward, hand raised to grab Izuku's shoulder, likely to burn the fabric of his uniform. Izuku didn't use a quirk. He didn't need one. He heard the scuff of the shoe. He felt the displacement of air. Izuku pivoted on his left heel. He dropped his center of gravity. His right hand came up, not to strike, but to intercept. He caught Bakugo's wrist mid-swing. The slap of skin on skin echoed in the entryway. Bakugo's explosion fizzled in his palm, directed harmlessly away from Izuku. Time seemed to stop. The students nearby gasped. Bakugo stared at his wrist, then at Izuku. His red eyes were wide with disbelief. Izuku Midoriya, Deku, had caught him. Touch me again without permission, Izuku said, his voice low, audible only to Bakugo, and I will demonstrate why center of gravity is more important than raw power. He released Bakugo's wrist. Good luck, Katsuki. Izuku turned and walked through the gate, blending into the crowd. Bakugo stood there, clutching his wrist, trembling. But this time, it wasn't the thrill of victory. It was the cold, creeping realization that the world had shifted on its axis, and he had been left behind. Part 8. The written exam was a slaughter, but not for Izuku. He sat in the lecture hall, the test paper in front of him. English, math, history, hero law, quirk theory. He breezed through it. He had spent 10 years analyzing quirks. He had spent 10 months optimizing his brain alongside his body. While other students groaned over the complex physics questions regarding quirk trajectory, Izuku was already calculating the variables. Question 34. A villain with a gigantification quirk, approximate 20 m, is rampage in a dense urban zone. Calculate the collateral damage reduction if engaged from the north versus the east. Izuku smiled. He wrote down the answer, citing the zoning laws of Muzutafu and the wind shear effect on large bodies. He finished 20 minutes early. He didn't put his head down. He sat upright, meditating, visualizing the power he had swallowed. He could feel it now. A warmth in his stomach. A hum in his veins. It wasn't scary. It felt like fuel. High-octane fuel waiting for a spark. Don't let it explode, he told himself. Engine regulation. Throttle control. Part 9. Present mic and the premonition. Everybody say hey. Present Mic's voice boomed through the auditorium. The silence that followed was deafening. Tough crowd, tough crowd. Izuku sat in his assigned seat. To his right was Bakugo, who was brooding silently, refusing to look at him. Present Mic began explaining the practical exam. Robots. Points. Villain bots. Izuku's hand shot up. Present Mic paused. Yes. Reviewer number 2234. You mentioned 4 types of villains, Izuku said clearly, his voice carrying without shouting. The pamphlet lists 1 point, 2 point, and 3 point. However, there is a 0 pointer listed as an obstacle. Is this an obstacle to be avoided, or an obstacle to be neutralized? And if it is to be avoided, does engaging it result in a penalty? Excellent question, Mike shouted. The 0 pointer is just a gimmick. A rampage mechanism. Think of it like a thwomp from Mario Brothers. If you see it, run. Understood, Izuku said, sitting down. So, a stress test. An unbeatable enemy to test fear response. Classic. Suddenly, a blue-haired boy a few rows down stood up. It was the same boy who had almost scolded him at the gate, had Izuku not walked perfectly. Sir. The boy, Ida Tenya, Izuku recognized from the Somei Junior High insignia, pointed stiffly. And you? The one with the green hair. Izuku looked at him. Yes? You've been muttering, wait. Ida paused. He realized Izuku hadn't been muttering. Izuku was sitting perfectly still, holding a pen, looking attentive. Ida adjusted his glasses, flustered. He had prepared a speech about the muttering being distracting, but the boy was the picture of academic discipline. I simply wanted to say that your question was insightful, Ida pivoted awkwardly. Thank you, Izuku nodded. You're Tenya Ida, right? From the Ida hero family. Ingenium is your brother. I recognize the engine exhaust ports on your calves. It's an honor, Ida blinked. He turned bright red. Oh! You are knowledgeable. Yes. Thank you. Ida sat down, looking confused but pleased. Bakugo, beside Izuku, looked like he was about to have an aneurysm. Since when do you charm the elite, nerd? Since I started speaking up, Izuku whispered back. The lights dimmed. The screen flashed. Battle Center B. Izuku stood up. He grabbed his tracksuit. He felt the fire in his guts spreading to his limbs. He walked toward the changing rooms. Doubt is rust, he repeated. I am steel, and today I smash. Part 1. The staging area. The bus ride to Battle Center B was a study in tension. The air inside the vehicle was thick enough to choke on, smelling of nervous sweat, hair gel, and the distinct ozone scent of quirk activation. Students tapped their feet, muttered prayers, or stared blankly out the windows as the massive facility grew larger on the horizon. Izuku Midoriya sat near the front, his posture relaxed, his eyes scanning the interior of the bus. He wasn't meditating, he was gathering intelligence. Subject A: blonde, spiky hair. Emitter type: sparks from palms. Anxiety high. Subject B: large, rock-like skin. Mutant type: high durability, likely low mobility. Calm. Subject C: brunette bob cut. Emitter/contact type: levitation or gravity manipulation based on the pads on her fingertips. Nausea evident. It was the girl he had briefly seen at the entrance. Ochako Uraraka. She looked like she was about to vomit. Her hands were clenched in her lap, her knuckles white. Izuku shifted in his seat. In another life, he would have been too paralyzed by his own fear to notice hers. In this life, he saw a variable that needed stabilizing. Panic was contagious. If she panicked in the field, she could become a liability to herself and others. He leaned across the aisle. Deep breath, he said. His voice was low, cutting through the murmuring of the other students. Uraraka jumped, her eyes snapping to his. Huh? You're hyperventilating, Izuku observed clinically, though his expression was kind. You're taking shallow breaths. It's increasing the CO2 in your blood. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4, exhale for 4. Box breathing. It resets the parasympathetic nervous system. Uraraka blinked, surprised by the sudden, specific instruction. She looked at the green-haired boy. He didn't look scared. He looked like he was reading a weather report. She tried it. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Better? Izuku asked. Yeah, she breathed out, her shoulders dropping an inch. Yeah, actually. Thanks. I'm just really nervous. Fear is a biological signal, Izuku said, adjusting his gloves. It means you recognize the stakes. Use the adrenaline, don't let it use you. Right, she nodded, a determined look replacing the nausea. I'm Uraraka Ochako, Midoriya Izuku. Good luck out there, Uraraka. The bus hissed to a halt. The doors folded open. The students poured out onto the pavement outside the massive gates of Battle Center B. The scale of the place was staggering. It wasn't just a training ground. It was a full-scale replica of a city district, complete with skyscrapers, roads, and traffic lights. Izuku stood at the back of the crowd, stretching his calves. He checked his gear. His green tracksuit was durable, synthetic blend, high mobility. His red sneakers were double-knotted. He wore simple utility gloves with reinforced knuckles, bought from a hardware store, not a hero support shop, but effective nonetheless. He had no weapon. UA rules prohibited bringing support items not registered beforehand. He would have to improvise. Hey! Are you ready? President Mick's voice blasted from the tower speakers, echoing off the concrete walls. The crowd shuffled, waiting for a countdown. Waiting for a signal. What's wrong? There are no countdowns in real battles. Mike yelled. Go! 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 The psychology of the mob was fascinating. For a split second, the hundreds of students froze, their brains struggling to process the lack of a structured start. Izuku Midoriya did not freeze. The moment the word go left the speakers, Izuku's rear foot dug into the pavement. He exploded forward. He bypassed the confused students at the front. He was a green blur, sprinting past the still opening gates before anyone else had taken a step. Run! Someone yelled behind him, breaking the spell. But Izuku already had a 50-meter lead. Part 2, The Quirkless Hunter. The city was silent for exactly 4 seconds. Then, the grinding of gears began. Izuku turned a corner onto a main avenue. His eyes darted left, right, up. Target acquired. A one-pointer. A fast, single-wheeled robot with long arms, speeding down the street toward him. Izuku didn't stop. He didn't slow down. One for all is volatile, he reminded himself. Using it now, without a target that requires maximum output, is a waste of resources. It risks injury. I fight with what I have. He scanned the alleyway to his left. A construction zone. A pile of debris. He saw it. A length of steel rebar, about 4 feet long, jutting out of a concrete block. Izuku slid into the alley, grabbed the rebar with both hands, and wrenched it free with a grunt of effort. The rust bit into his gloves. It was heavy, unbalanced, and perfect. The one-pointer cornered the alley, its red eye glowing. Target acquired. It lunged. Izuku didn't retreat. He stepped into the guard. He dropped his weight, sliding under the robot's swinging arm. He visualized the blueprints of the training bots he had studied online, leaked schematics from forums he frequented. Weak point, cervical connection cables. Rear chassis. Izuku swung the rebar like a baseball bat. He didn't aim for the armor. He aimed for the neck. Clang. The steel bar connected with the exposed wiring at the base of the robot's head. Sparks showered down. The robot twitched, its gyroscope failing. It listed to the side and crashed into the wall. Izuku didn't wait to see if it exploded. He brought the bar down again, driving the tip into the robot's central eye lens. Glass shattered. The light died. 1 point. Inefficient, Izuku muttered, pulling the bar free. Too much time. I need to move faster. He sprinted back into the street. The other students had arrived now. The air was filled with explosions, laser blasts, and shouting. A boy with a laser growing out of his navel was blasting a 2-pointer. A girl with acid was melting a 3-pointer. Izuku felt a pang of envy. They had range. They had firepower. He had a metal stick and 10 months of beach cleaning. Logic over emotion, he chided himself. Work the problem. He saw a 3-pointer, a massive, scorpion-like machine, cornering a student who was frozen in fear. The robot raised its tail to strike. Izuku assessed the distance. 20 meters. Too far to run before the strike. He looked at the object in his hand. He spun, using the momentum of his hips, and hurled the rebar like a javelin. The steel rod sailed through the air. It didn't pierce the armor. Izuku wasn't strong enough for that without a quirk, but it slammed into the robot's joint mechanism with a resounding crack, jamming the tail mid-swing. The robot screeched, distracted. Move! Izuku roared at the frozen student as he closed the distance. The student scrambled away. Izuku didn't engage the three-pointer head-on. He couldn't. Instead, he vaulted onto a parked car, jumped to a lamppost, and swung onto the robot's back. It bucked like a bronco. Izuku held on with one hand, his grip strength, honed by hauling refrigerators, keeping him attached. With his free hand he ripped at the access panel on the robot's neck. It was locked. Fine. Brute force. He drew back his fist. He considered using one for all. Just a flicker. Just 5%. No. If I break my fingers now, I lose dexterity for the rest of the exam. He smashed his fist down, standard human strength, but targeted. He hit the sensor array. Once. Twice. 3 times. The plastic cracked. He jammed his fingers into the wiring and ripped it out. The robot powered down, collapsing with a groan. 4 points. Izuku slid off the chassis, breathing hard. His knuckles were bleeding inside his gloves. 4 points in 6 minutes, he calculated, checking his watch. Projected score, 20. Not enough. The average cutoff is usually around 45 to 50. He needed a force multiplier. He looked around. The battlefield was chaos. Debris was everywhere. He saw a 2-pointer pinned under a fallen billboard, struggling to get free. Other students were ignoring it, looking for active threats. Izuku ran over. He didn't destroy it immediately. He grabbed a loose piece of the billboard frame, a sharp, jagged angle of aluminum. He drove it into the robot's battery casing. 6 points. Scavenger tactics, he noted. Unheroic? Maybe. Effective? Yes. He moved on. Part 3, The Plateau, 20 minutes in. The fatigue was setting in. Izuku's score sat at 28. He was panting heavily now. The adrenaline was starting to curdle into exhaustion. Fighting giant robots with bare hands and improvised weapons was grueling work. He watched as a student with engines in his legs, Tenya Ida, zoomed past, kicking the head off a robot with effortless power. He's at 50 points, easy, Izuku analyzed. Bakugo is probably at 70. Izuku ducked into an alleyway to catch his breath. He leaned against the brick wall, wiping sweat from his eyes. I'm falling behind. My physical specs are peak human, but these machines require superhuman output for efficient disposal. I need to take a risk. He looked at his right hand. He could feel the power of one for all buzzing beneath his skin. It was like holding a storm in a bottle. All Might said to clench and scream. That's an uncontrolled release. If I use it, I break the limb. If I break the limb, I can't fight. If I can't fight, I can't score. But if I don't score, I fail. It was a paradox. The power he needed to pass was the power that would disqualify him through injury. There has to be a middle ground, he whispered. A throttle. He closed his eyes for a second, trying to visualize the power. Not as an egg in a microwave, but as a river. A river has gates. Focus. Suddenly, the ground shook. It wasn't a vibration. It was an earthquake. Dust fell from the rooftops. The sunlight was blotted out by a shadow that stretched across the entire city block. Izuku opened his eyes and stepped out of the alley. At the end of the main avenue, rising above the skyscrapers, was a nightmare. The 0-pointer. It was colossal. Its treads were crushing cars flat. Its head scraped the clouds. It was less a robot and more a moving natural disaster. Run! It's huge! Forget the points. Just go! The other examinees broke. The cohesion of the exam dissolved instantly. Students turned and fled, a wave of panicked teenagers streaming past Izuku. Move, green hair! Someone shouted, shoving him aside. Izuku stumbled but regained his footing. He stared at the robot. Gimmick, Present Mike had said. An obstacle to be avoided. Logic dictates retreat, Izuku's brain supplied. There are 0 points to be gained. Engaging consumes energy and risks death. The rational move is to run. He took a step back. Then he heard it. Ow! A small, pained sound. Underneath the roar of the machine, underneath the screaming of the crowd, Izuku froze. His head snapped toward the source, 30 meters ahead. Near the robot's path, Yurariko Chako was on the ground. A piece of rubble from a destroyed building had pinned her leg. She was struggling to lift it, her face twisted in pain. The zero-pointer was looming over her. Its massive metal hand was reaching down, grabbing the debris around her, churning the earth. It wasn't targeting her specifically, she was just an ant in its path. She would be crushed. The calculation completed in Izuku's mind in a fraction of a second. Variable 1, distance to target 30 meters. Variable 2, speed of robot 5 meters/second. Variable 3, time to impact 6 seconds. Variable 4, weight of rubble approximately 400 pounds. Can I lift it? Yes. In time? Maybe, but the robot is too close. Even if I free her, the tread will hit us both before we clear the zone. Conclusion: the threat must be neutralized. Logic screamed impossible. Fear screamed run. But underneath the logic, underneath the fear, something else roared. A quiet, furious voice that sounded like All Might. Meddling where you don't belong is the essence of being a hero. Izuku Midoriya stopped thinking. He started moving. Part 4: The Smash. He didn't run away. He ran toward the Titan. He moved faster than he had all day. The fatigue vanished, burned away by a surge of pure, desperate focus. He reached the base of the robot. Uraraka saw him. Her eyes went wide. Midoriya! Run! She screamed. I'm not leaving you, he said. He didn't look at her. He looked up. The robot was too tall. He needed altitude. He saw a piece of the robot's armor plating, hanging low near the tread. Izuku crouched. One for all. He didn't ask for permission. He grabbed the power and pulled. He felt the veins in his legs ignite. It was agony. It felt like magma was being poured into his bones. Don't let it explode yet. Channel it. 100% in the legs. Jump. The pavement beneath him didn't just crack, it pulverized. A crater formed where Izuku had stood. He launched into the air like a missile. The G-force pressed his eyes shut for a millisecond. The wind roared in his ears, louder than the machine. He soared past the treads. Past the chassis. Past the shoulders. He was level with the face. He opened his eyes. He was floating in the air, suspended in that brief moment of weightlessness at the apex of a jump. His legs were numb. Probably broken. He couldn't feel them. That's the cost, he thought with detached clarity. Legs for altitude. Now the arm. He clenched his right fist. He could feel the energy swirling, chaotic and violent. If I use 100%, I lose the arm. I become a projectile with no landing gear. Acceptable. He pulled his arm back. He looked at the massive red eye of the zero-pointer. This is for her. This is for the beach. This is for the years of being nothing. He didn't scream smash immediately. He exhaled sharply. He rotated his hips in midair, channeling the kinetic chain. Smash! He punched the air. The pressure wave was instantaneous. The air itself compressed and detonated. The metal face of the zero-pointer crumpled inward like a soda can. The force didn't just dent it, it caved the entire head structure in. The shockwave blew the back of the robot's head out. The massive machine groaned, the metal shrieking as the momentum was violently reversed. It tipped backward, defeated by a single human boy. And then, Izuku began to fall. Part 5: The Cost of Business. The euphoria of the punch lasted exactly 1 second. Then pain arrived. His right arm was a ruined mess. It was purple, swollen, flailing uselessly in the wind. His legs were dragging behind him, dead weight. He was plummeting from a height of 200 feet. Terminal velocity calculation. His brain fired rapidly, even as tears pricked his eyes from the pain. Impact in 4 seconds. Survival probability, 0%. He tried to use his left arm, his only good limb, to create wind resistance, or to aim for a building. Maybe he could hook a window ledge? No. I'm too fast. I'll rip the arm off. He stared at the ground rushing up to meet him. I saved her, he thought. That's enough. Slap! A hand connected with his cheek. Suddenly, the world stopped spinning. The rushing wind vanished. He was floating. Uraraka. She was floating on a piece of debris she must have levitated, intercepting him 10 feet above the ground. Her face was pale, streaked with dust and tears. Release! She choked out, pressing her fingers together. Gravity returned. Izuku fell the last 10 feet. He hit the ground. It wasn't a soft landing, but it wasn't a lethal one. He landed on his back. The air left his lungs in a wheeze. God dash! The pain in his legs and arm flared white-hot, stealing his vision for a moment. He lay there, staring up at the blue sky, gasping for air. The silence returned to the battlefield. Then, the buzzer sounded. Time's up! Izuku stared at the clouds. They were drifting peacefully. 0 points, he thought. I have 28 points. Maybe 30. That won't be enough. He heard footsteps. A shadow fell over him. It was Uraraka. She was hovering over him, looking terrified. Midoriya! Are you, oh God, your arm? Your legs. Izuku turned his head. He grimaced, fighting the urge to pass out. Uraraka, he rasped. His voice was weak, but steady. Are you operational? She blinked, tears spilling over. What? Am I? Yes. I'm fine. You saved me. But you. Good, Izuku whispered. He closed his eyes. Mission accomplished. Part 6, The Aftermath. Make way! Make way! The shuffling of heavy feet signaled the arrival of Recovery Girl. The small, elderly heroine pushed through the crowd of stunned students who had gathered around the crater. She looked down at Izuku. She sighed, a long, weary sound. Well, she said. You certainly don't do things by halves, do you, Sonny? She knelt beside him. Her lips puckered. This is going to drain you. Try not to die. Smooch. The healing quirk activated. Izuku felt his body accelerate. His metabolism roared into overdrive. The bones in his legs snapped back into place. The shattered radius and ulna in his arm knitted together. The bruising faded to yellow, then vanished. The pain of the injury was replaced by a wave of exhaustion so profound that Izuku felt like he was sinking into the pavement. He didn't pass out. He forced his eyes to stay open. Thank you, he mumbled. Recovery Girl handed him a gummy candy. Eat this. Your blood sugar is in the basement. And be careful, your bones are healed, but they're fragile. No more jumping off buildings today. She turned to the other students. Anyone else injured? No? Good. Izuku sat up slowly. He looked at his arm. It was whole. Tenya Ida walked up to him. The tall boy looked shaken. You. Ida adjusted his glasses, but his hand was trembling. You jumped. You had no points. I saw your score on the board earlier. You were behind. You risked everything. Ida looked at the destroyed 0-pointer, then back at Izuku. I misjudged you, Ida said stiffly. I thought you were analyzing to find a way to win. But you were analyzing to find a way to save. Izuku chewed the gummy candy slowly. He stood up, his legs wobbling only slightly. I didn't have a choice, Izuku said quietly. She was in danger. The points were irrelevant. He picked up his shredded glove from the ground. If that means I fail, Izuku said, looking at the gates of UA, then I fail. But I can live with that. He walked away, limping slightly toward the exit. He didn't look back. Part 7, The Long Week. The week following the exam was a different kind of torture. There was no beach to clean. There was no intense training schedule. There was just silence. Inko Midoriya found her son in the living room 3 days later. He was doing push-ups. Izuku, she said gently. You've done 500. Take a break. If I failed UA, Izuku grunted, not stopping, I need to prepare for the Shiketsu High entrance exam. Their physical standards are higher. I can't afford to atrophy. You don't know that you failed, Inko said, placing a tray of tea on the table. Izuku paused at the top of a push-up. He stood up, wiping sweat from his forehead with a towel. Mom, he said, sitting down. I counted. I destroyed approximately 7 robots before the 0-pointer. That's roughly 28 points. Based on historical data, the cutoff for the hero course is usually around 40 to 50. Mathematically, I did not pass. He took a sip of tea. His hand was steady. I'm not sad, he lied. Or maybe he wasn't lying. I did what I had to do. I used the power All Might gave me. I saved a person. If UA doesn't want that, then I'll find another way. Inko looked at him. He was so composed. So grown up. I'm proud of you, she said. Points or no points. Izuku smiled, a small, tired thing. Thanks, Mom. Part 8, The Projection. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. It was a standard envelope, heavy and thick. Izuku took it to his room. He sat at his desk. He didn't stare at it for an hour. He opened it immediately with a letter opener. He pulled out a small metal disc. Holographic projector, he noted. He placed it on the desk. Bzzzt. A hologram sprang to life. I am here. All Might filled the room, projecting from the tiny disc. He was in his Silver Age costume, striking a pose. All Might? Izuku blinked. Wait, this is pre-recorded. Young Midoriya. The hologram boomed. You have been waiting. And I have been busy. Sorry for the radio silence. I am now a teacher at UA. I deduced that, Izuku murmured. You did well on the written exam. All Might continued. You passed with flying colors. But the practical, the practical. Izuku's hands tightened on his knees. Here it comes. You scored 28 villain points, All Might said, his voice dropping to a serious tone. As you know, that is not enough to pass. Izuku nodded. He accepted it. However, All Might leaned into the camera. Do you think a hero course would reject someone who did the right thing? You faced an overwhelming threat to save another. You risked your future for a stranger. A hero who doesn't risk their life is just a vigilante with a paycheck. All Might clicked a remote. A video played on the screen behind him. It was Uraraka. She was standing in the faculty office, pleading with President Mike. Please! Can you give my points to him? He saved me. He jumped when everyone else ran. I heard him say he didn't have many points. Please! I don't need mine. Izuku felt a lump form in his throat. She had tried to sacrifice her score for him. You have a knack for inspiring others, young Midoriya. All Might beamed. But there is no need for her to share. Because the entrance exam is not graded on villainy alone, the screen flashed. A new scoreboard appeared. Izuku Midoriya, villain points, 28, rescue points, 60, total, 88 points. Rescue points. All Might shouted. Points given by a panel of judges for heroic acts. And for risking your life against the zero-pointer, you earned a massive score. You passed, Izuku Midoriya. You are in the top tier. All Might reached a hand toward the camera. Come, young Midoriya. This is your hero academia. The hologram faded. Izuku sat in the silence of his room. He looked at the number. 88. He didn't cry. The old Izuku would have flooded the apartment. The old Izuku would have sobbed until he couldn't breathe. The new Izuku stared at the empty space where All Might had been. He felt the scar on his hand where the rebar had cut him. He felt the phantom ache in his legs. He stood up. He walked to the mirror on his closet door. He looked at himself. He saw the fire in his own eyes. Calculated, he whispered. He clenched his fist. I'm in. Part 1, The Threshold. The blazer of the UA high school uniform was gray, stiff with newness, and smelled faintly of dry cleaning chemicals. For most students, putting it on was a moment of vanity, a chance to preen in the mirror and admire the gold buttons that signified they had made it. For Izuku Midoriya, buttoning the blazer felt like locking the plates of a suit of armor. He stood in front of the full-length mirror in his bedroom. His tie was knotted with geometric precision, a skill he had learned from a YouTube tutorial on military dress codes. His trousers were hemmed perfectly to allow for maximum range of motion without snagging. His red sneakers, usually scuffed, had been scrubbed clean. Izuku? Inko knocked gently on the doorframe. She held a bento box wrapped in an All Might handkerchief. Her eyes were rimmed with red, threatening to spill over at any moment. You look so grown up, she whispered. Izuku turned. He didn't offer a shy, wobbly smile. He offered a nod, firm and assured. I'm ready, Mom. He took the bento box. Don't worry about me, he said, adjusting his backpack straps. I've run the simulations. I've prepped the variables. It's just school. It wasn't just school. It was the summit of superhuman society. But telling himself it was just school was a tactical lie. A psychological buffer to keep his heart rate at a steady 60 beats per minute. I'll be home by 6 p.m. If I'm late, it means I'm in the library or the gym. I'll text. He walked out the door, the morning sun hitting his face. He didn't skip. He marched. Part 2, The the noise and the signal. Class 1A. The door was massive, towering 20 feet high, a subtle architectural nod to the potential size of mutant-type quirks, but also an intimidation tactic. Everything here is bigger than you, the door seemed to say. Grow or get out. Izuku placed his hand on the handle. He paused for 1 second to center his breathing. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. He slid the door open. The noise hit him first. Don't put your feet on the desk. Ha! Who are you to tell me what to do, Four Eyes? I am Tenya Ida from Somei Junior High. It is disrespectful to the upperclassmen who sat there before you, and to the craftsman who built the desk. Disrespectful? Like I care. What are you, a teacher's pet? Izuku stepped inside. The classroom was bright, the morning light streaming through massive windows. At the center of the chaos were Bakugo, feet propped arrogantly on the desk, and Ida, chopping the air with his hand like a robot. Izuku walked to his desk, seat 18, according to the chart. He moved quietly, his footsteps silent on the linoleum. Ida noticed him first. The tall boy spun around. Ah. You. Ida marched over. Midoriya. Good morning. The entire class turned to look. This was the boy who had smashed the 0-pointer. Good morning, Ida, Izuku said calmly, setting his bag down. I must apologize. Ida bowed stiffly. I misjudged you at the entrance exam. You perceived the true nature of the test, the rescue points, while I was blinded by the superficial objective. You are a superior candidate. I just did what was logical, Izuku replied, unzipping his bag and taking out a notebook. But thank you, Deku. The growl came from the back. Bakugo was staring at him. The look wasn't just anger anymore. It was suspicion. It was the look of a man watching a dog suddenly stand up and start speaking French. Get your feet off the desk, Kaken, Izuku said without looking up from his notebook. The room went deadly silent. Bakugo's eye twitched. What did you say? Izuku turned his head. His green eyes were flat, unbothered. I said get your feet down. Ida is right. It's bad discipline. Also, the grit on your soles is scratching the laminate. If you want to be a top hero, start by respecting your environment. Bakugo's jaw dropped. Smoke curled from his palms. You wanna die, nerd? Not particularly. I have a syllabus to get through. Before Bakugo could detonate, the door behind Izuku slid open again. Oh. It's you! Ochako Uraraka beamed, standing in the doorway. Midoriya! You made it! I mean, of course you made it. That punch was amazing, but... Good morning, Uraraka, Izuku nodded to her. Your ankle? Is it healed? Yeah. Recovery girl is magic. She made a chopping motion. But wow, I can't believe we're here. Isn't this exciting? Go somewhere else if you want to play at making friends. The voice came from the floor. Izuku looked down immediately. He didn't jump. He didn't yelp. He had sensed the presence, a slight shift in air pressure. A smell of stale coffee and eye drops. A yellow sleeping bag lay in the doorway like a giant caterpillar. A face peered out, tired, unshaven, with bloodshot eyes and messy black hair. The rest of the class froze in horror. Underground hero, Eraserhead, Izuku's mind supplied instantly. Shota Aizawa. Quirk, erasure. Combat style, capture weapon/ambush. Disposition, ruthless efficiency. Izuku straightened his back. Aizawa unzipped the bag and stood up, sipping a pouch of jelly drink. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down. Time is limited. You kids aren't rational enough. He tossed the empty pouch into a bin with perfect accuracy. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. Nice to meet you. A teacher? The class gasped. He looked like a homeless person who had wandered in off the street. Aizawa reached into his sleeping bag and pulled out a stack of blue gym uniforms. Put these on and meet me on the grounds, he said, his voice bored. We're doing a quirk apprehension test. Part 3, the hypothesis of expulsion. The locker room was a buzz of nervous energy. A test on the first day. A boy with red spiky hair, Kirishima, asked, pulling on his shirt. What about orientation? The ceremony? Yuri is known for its freestyle approach, Izuku said, lacing his gym shoes. He tied them tight. Double knots. Teachers have full discretion over their curriculum. Eraserhead isn't the type for ceremonies. Eraserhead? A small boy with grape-like balls on his head asked. I've never heard of him. He dislikes the media, Izuku explained, standing up and checking his range of motion. He focuses on takedowns and suppression. If he's our teacher, he's not looking for flash. He's looking for substance. Bakugo slammed his locker shut. He glared at Izuku but didn't say anything. The air between them was electric, heavy with unsaid threats. Outside, the sun was high and hot. The class gathered on the pea grounds. Aizawa stood with a tablet in hand. Softball throw. Standing long jump. 50-meter dash. Endurance running. Grip strength. Upper body training. Seated toe touch. Sit-ups. He looked at the students with dead eyes. You did these in middle school without quirks. It's irrational. The Ministry of Education is procrastinating on updating the standards. He pointed at Bakugo. Bakugo. You finished first in the entrance exam. What was your softball throw in middle school? 67 meters, Bakugo scoffed. Try it with your quirk. Stay in the circle. Bakugo stepped into the circle. He grinned, a feral, predatory expression. He wound up. Die. Boom. The explosion was massive. The ball rocketed into the sky, trailing smoke. Die. Izuku murmured. Tactically interesting choice of shout. Aizawa held up the tablet. 705.2 meters. The class erupted. Whoa! Awesome! We can use our quirks? This is gonna be fun. I want to go next. Izuku watched Aizawa's face. The teacher's eyes narrowed. Here it comes, Izuku thought. The hook. Fun, huh? Aizawa muttered. You have 3 years to become heroes. You think it's going to be fun and games the whole time? He smiled, and it was a terrifying, jagged thing. Right. The one with the lowest score across all 8 events will be judged as having no potential, and will be punished with immediate expulsion. Huh? The class screamed in unison. Expulsion? Uraraka cried out. It's the first day. That's not fair. That's too unreasonable. The class murmured in agreement. Panic was setting in. Izuku stood silently. He watched Aizawa. Is it a lie? It was the logical question. Teachers used fear as a motivator. It was a classic pedagogical tool. However, Izuku analyzed, UA records show Aizawa expelled an entire class of first years last year. 154 expulsions on his record. He is not bluffing. Or rather, he is willing to follow through if the bluff is called. Natural disasters aren't fair, Izuku said. The murmurs stopped. Everyone looked at him. Izuku was looking at Aizawa. Flash floods. Earthquakes. Villains who take hostages. They aren't fair, Izuku continued, his voice steady. They don't wait for you to be ready. They don't care if it's your first day. If we can't handle an unfair test, we can't handle the job. Aizawa's eyebrows raised a fraction of an inch. He looked at the green-haired boy. Correct, Aizawa said softly. Go beyond. Plus ultra. That is the style of this school. He swiped his tablet. Now. Let's start. Part 4, the baseline. The tests began. Izuku Midoriya had a problem. He had one for all. But he couldn't use it. Every time he activated the power, even a fraction, he risked shattering a bone. In the entrance exam, the adrenaline had masked the pain, and Recovery Girl had fixed the damage. But here, if he blew his arm off on the first test, he would fail the remaining 7. A score of 0 on 7 events meant expulsion. Strategy, Izuku thought, stepping up to the 50-meter dash line. Rely on the vessel. I spent 10 months dragging trucks through sand. My base stats are higher than the average teenager. He was paired against Bakugo. Readied. The robot camera intoned. Bakugo crouched, sparks flying backward. I'm gonna leave you in the dust, Deku. Focus on the track, Katsuki, Izuku replied, getting into a sprinter's stance. Bang! Bakugo exploded forward, using his blasts as propulsion. He crossed the line in 4.13 seconds. Izuku didn't use a quirk. He just ran. Perfect form. Knees high, arms pumping, breathing synchronized. He crossed the line. 5.51 seconds, the robot announced. It wasn't superhuman. But it was fast. Faster than most high school athletes. Bakugo skidded to a halt and looked back, sneering. Slow. Faster than I was yesterday, Izuku noted, writing the time in his mental notebook. Grip strength. Izuku squeezed the device. His forearm muscles corded. 56 kilograms. Beside him, a boy with multiple arms, Shoji, scored 540 kilograms. Comparison is the thief of joy, Izuku reminded himself. Just don't be last. Standing long jump, Bakugo flew across the sandbox. Aoyama used his laser to propel himself. Izuku swung his arms, coiled his legs, and leaped. He cleared the box. It was a good jump for a human. It was pathetic for a hero. Side steps. Mineta, the small grape boy, was a blur, bouncing back and forth. Izuku moved with military agility, his feet quick and precise. He scored well above average. As the test progressed, the class began to notice. Hey, Kirishima whispered to Shiro. Midoriya. He hasn't used his quirk yet, has he? No, Shiro replied. He's just really fit. Like scary fit. Did you see his back muscles during the toe touch? But he's falling behind in the rankings, Ida noted, looking concerned. Without a quirk enhancement, he cannot compete with the raw output of the others. He is consistently in the middle, but the ball throw is heavily weighted for power types. Izuku knew it too. He stood on the sidelines, watching. Current ranking estimate, 12th or 13th, he calculated. Not last. Hagakure and Mineta are struggling with the pure physical tests. But the ball throw is the game changer. If I throw it 40 meters like a normal human, my average drops. I need an outlier score. He looked at his right hand. I have to use it. Part 5, the intervention. Midoriya Izuku. Aizawa called his name. Izuku stepped into the circle. He picked up the softball. It felt light. The class went quiet. They remembered the punch from the exam. They were waiting for the shockwave. Izuku took a deep breath. Okay. Full cowling is impossible. I don't know how to throttle the engine yet. It's 0 or 100. But maybe I don't need the whole engine. Maybe I just need one piston. He wound up. He visualized the power flowing into his arm. One for all. 100%. He felt the veins ignite. The power surged. He swung his arm. Smash! He threw the ball. It left his hand, and landed 46 meters away. Huh! Izuku blinked. His arm didn't hurt. The power had vanished. Just as he released the ball, the energy had simply evaporated. I erased your quirk. The voice was dry and tired. Izuku turned. Aizawa stood there, his scarf floating in the air, defying gravity. His hair was standing on end. His eyes glowed a piercing red. That entrance exam, Aizawa said, walking closer. It wasn't rational. Even a kid with a powerful quirk, if he can't control it, he's just a liability. I saw the footage. You destroyed your arm to save one person. What happens after that? You're useless. You become a victim that someone else has to save. He stopped in front of Izuku. The glowing eyes bored into him. You have zero potential. The class gasped. It was a brutal assessment. Canonically, Izuku trembled. He stuttered. He tried to explain. Here, Izuku Midoriya stared back. He analyzed the man in front of him. Dry eye syndrome. He blinked. The hair is dropping. Eraserhead, Izuku stated. Aizawa paused. So you know me. You operate on logic, Izuku said, his voice hard. So let's look at the logic. You are judging my potential based on a single data point from the past, the entrance exam. You are assuming that because I broke my arm then, I will break it now. You are assuming I haven't learned. Aizawa narrowed his eyes. And have you? I'm standing here, aren't I? Izuku stepped closer, invading the teacher's personal space. It was a move of aggression that stunned the class. You say I'm a liability because I sacrifice my body. But tell me, Sensei, if a villain is about to kill a civilian, and the only way to stop them breaks my arm, should I let the civilian die to save my medical bill? Aizawa didn't answer immediately. I can't control the output yet, Izuku admitted. That is a fact. But refusing to use the power because of fear? That's illogical. I'm here to learn control. If you expel me before I can try, then you're not a teacher. You're just an obstacle. Aizawa's eyes widened slightly. A creepy smile spread across his face. He has guts, Aizawa thought. And he's right. I was testing his mental state. He didn't break. I returned your quirk, Aizawa said, his eyes returning to black. You have 2 throws left. Hurry up and get it over with. Izuku turned back to the field. He picked up the ball. He's right about one thing, Izuku thought. I can't be a liability. I need to stay in the fight. He held the ball. He visualized the energy again, not the whole arm. Too much cost. He focused on the tip of his right index finger. Concentrate the stockpile. Just the fingertip. 1 point of failure. He wound up. He threw the ball using his natural hip rotation and shoulder strength. The ball left his palm. At the very last microsecond, as the ball rolled off his index finger, he pulled the trigger. Smash! The air cracked. A sonic boom exploded from his fingertip. The ball vanished. It tore through the sky, piercing the clouds, riding a jet stream of pure force. Izuku stood firm. He didn't collapse. He winced, clutching his right hand. His index finger was purple, swollen, and definitely broken, but the rest of his arm was fine. Beep. Aizawa looked at the tablet. He showed it to the class. 705.3 meters. 0.1 meters further than Bakugo. Izuku turned to Aizawa. He held up his fist, the broken finger throbbing. His face was pale from the pain, but his eyes were burning. I'm still standing, sensei. Aizawa looked at the finger, then at the boy's defiant face. The teacher's grin widened. This kid, Aizawa thought. Higher than 700? The class screamed. He beat Bakugo. His finger is busted though. Part 6, the reaction. Bakugo stood frozen. 705.3. It was a number. But it was more than a number. It was a declaration of war. He was quirkless. Bakugo's mind raced, fracturing under the strain. He was a pebble. He lied to me. He tricked me. For 10 years, he was laughing at me. DKU. The scream tore from Bakugo's throat. It was primal. You bastard! Tell me how you did that. Bakugo launched himself. Explosions popped in his palms. He was aiming to kill. Or at least to hurt. To re-establish the hierarchy that had been the foundation of his entire life. Izuku saw him coming. Analysis. Right hand lead. Committed momentum. Emotional state. Compromised. Blind rage. Izuku didn't wait for Aizawa. He stepped forward. Bakugo swung his right arm. A wide, haymaker explosion. Izuku ducked under the swing. He stepped inside Bakugo's guard, his chest colliding with Bakugo's side. He grabbed Bakugo's right wrist with his left hand. He grabbed the fabric of Bakugo's uniform with his injured right hand, ignoring the screaming pain in his finger. Leverage. Izuku pivoted his hips. He pulled the wrist down and popped his hips up. Suinage. Bakugo's feet left the ground. The world flipped upside down for the explosive boy. Wham! Izuku slammed Bakugo into the dirt. Hard. The wind was knocked out of him with a wheeze. Izuku didn't let go. He held Bakugo pinned for a second, looking down at him. I told you, Kaken, Izuku said, his voice cold and breathless. Stop looking down. You'll trip. The scarf wrapped around both of them a second later. That's enough, Aizawa said. His hair was floating again. Don't make me use my quirk so much. I have dry eye. He released them. Bakugo lay on the ground, staring up at the sky, gasping for air. He wasn't physically injured, but his ego had just been shattered into 1,000 pieces. Izuku stepped back, cradling his broken finger. He bowed to Aizawa. My apologies for the disruption, sensei. Self-defense. Aizawa sighed. Whatever. Next event. Part 7, the verdict. The rest of the tests passed in a blur. Izuku pushed through the pain of his finger. He did sit-ups with grit teeth. He ran the distance run, pacing himself perfectly. Finally, they gathered around the tablet. Time for the results, Aizawa said. The total is a cumulative score. The hologram appeared. 1. Momo Yaoyorozu. 2. Shoto Todoroki. 3. Katsuki Bakugo. 4. Tenya Ida. 8. Izuku Midoriya. 20. Izuku scanned the bottom. 20. Minoru Mineta, the small boy screamed. And oh, I'm expelled. Izuku looked at his ranking. 8th, solidly in the top half. His physical scores combined with a massive ball throw had secured his safety. Aizawa clicked the screen off. By the way, the expulsion was a lie. Silence. It was a logical ruse to draw out your maximum potential. What? The class screamed again. Of course it was a lie, a tall girl with a ponytail, Yaoyorozu said with a sigh. It was obvious if you thought about it. No, it wasn't, Izuku said aloud. Yaoyorozu blinked. Excuse me? Izuku looked at Aizawa. You were ready to do it, Izuku said to the teacher. If I had thrown that ball 40 meters, or if I had broken my arm and couldn't finish the tests, you would have cut me. Right. The class looked back at Aizawa. Aizawa grinned. It wasn't a nice grin. Who knows? He said, turning around and walking away. Pick up a syllabus in the classroom. Midoriya, go to the nurse and get that finger fixed. It's ugly. He walked off. Izuku watched him go. He's dangerous, Izuku thought. But he's honest. I can work with that. Part 8, The Trio. The sun was setting as Izuku left the nurse's office. His finger was bandaged, healed but sore. Midoriya! He turned. Ida and Uraraka were waiting for him at the school gate. We waited for you. Uraraka cheered. Man, that was intense. I was so scared. Ida, Uraraka, Izuku nodded. You didn't have to wait. Nonsense. Ida chopped the air. We are classmates. And after that display, I have many questions about your training regimen. That judo throw was impeccable. It was just basic mechanics. Izuku shrugged, falling into step with them. You were so cool when you stood up to Aizawa-sensei. Uraraka said, pumping her fist. I thought I was gonna pass out, but you were like Eraserhead. She mimicked a deep voice. Izuku chuckled. It was a genuine sound. I was terrified, he admitted. But I realized something. What? Uraraka asked. Izuku looked at his hand. He clenched it into a fist. I belong here, he said. He looked at the setting sun. For a long time, I thought I was just a guest. A mistake. But today, I earned my spot. And I'm not giving it up. You sure did. Uraraka smiled. Let's go to the station. I'm starving. I know a good katsudon place, Izuku said. Lead the way, Midoriya. Ida commanded. As they walked away, Izuku felt the weight of the day settle. He was tired. He was sore. He had a teacher who wanted to expel him and a childhood friend who wanted to kill him. But he wasn't afraid. For the first time in his life, Izuku Midoriya walked home without looking at his feet. Part 1, Foundational Aesthetics. I am here. Coming through the door like a normal person, the declaration was anything but normal. It rattled the windows. It vibrated in the chests of 20 aspiring heroes. All Might burst into the classroom, his Silver Age cape fluttering in a wind that didn't exist indoors. He was a monolith of primary colors and overwhelming charisma. Foundational Hero Studies. All Might boomed, marching to the podium. For this class, we'll be building your hero foundation through various trials. Let's jump right in with this, the battle trial. He pressed a button, and the wall lined with numbered shelves slid open. Suitcases emerged. And to go with that, your costumes. Made based on your quirk registrations and requests you sent in before school started. The class erupted in cheers. Awesome! Our costumes! Izuku Midoriya sat quietly, his hand resting on the desk. He felt a hum of anticipation, but he kept it contained. A costume wasn't just clothing. It was equipment. It was a tool set. He walked to the shelf and pulled out case 18. It was heavy. Good, he thought. Mom followed the specs. 10 minutes later, the boys' locker room was a riot of spandex and armor. Midoriya, man, you're not changing? Kirishima asked, pulling on a pair of gear-shaped shoulder pads. Izuku was standing by his open case, inspecting a green jumpsuit. Just checking the integrity of the support items, he replied. He picked up the suit. It wasn't the flashy, bright green bunny suit of a fanboy. It was a darker, forest green, made of a reinforced Kevlar weave. He pulled it on. It fit like a second skin, tight but flexible. He strapped on the utility belt. It contained basic first aid, capture tape, and pouches for gathering evidence. He pulled on the knee and elbow pads. They were black, hard-shelled polymer. Finally, he picked up the mask. In his original sketchbook, years ago, he had designed it to look like All Might's smile. It had been a child's dream, but looking at it now, Izuku saw the practicality. It was a respirator. It filtered dust and smoke. He pulled the hood up. The ears, meant to mimic All Might's hair tufts, contained short-range communication receivers. He snapped the metal respirator over his mouth. He looked in the mirror. He didn't look like a rabbit. He looked like a Spec Ops soldier painted green. Whoa, Mineta squeaked from the bench. You look scary, Midoriya. Izuku turned. The respirator muffled his voice slightly, making it sound deeper, more metallic. Heroes should be scary to villains, Mineta. Part 2, The War Room, Ground Beta. The same urban training center used for the entrance exam, but this time, the stakes were different. Izuku walked out of the tunnel. The sunlight hit his visor. Whoa, Deku? Uraraka ran up to him. She was wearing a pink and black suit that hugged her form, looking slightly embarrassed. You look so cool. Very tactical, function over form, Izuku said, nodding. He looked at her suit. Your boots have shock absorbers for high-altitude landings? Smart. And the wrist guards likely stimulate pressure points to reduce nausea? Uraraka blinked. I think they just look cute. But let's go with your explanation. All Might stood before the class. The situation is this. The villains have hidden a nuclear weapon somewhere in their hideout. The heroes are trying to dispose of it. The heroes must either catch the villains or retrieve the nuclear weapon within the time limit. The villains must protect the weapon or catch the heroes. He held up a box. Teams and opponents will be determined by drawing lots. Izuku watched the drawing with hawk-like intensity. Team A, Izuku Midoriya Ochako Uraraka. Team D, Katsuki Bakugo Tenya Ida. The first match will be. All Might pulled 2 balls. Team A versus Team D, the class murmured. The fated rival battle already? Kaminari whispered. Izuku felt a heavy hand on his shoulder. He turned to see Bakugo, fully geared up in his grenade gauntlets. I'm gonna hurt you, Bakugo whispered. It wasn't a scream. It was a promise. I'm gonna hurt you so bad they'll have to stop the match. And I'm gonna prove that finger flick was a fluke. Izuku looked at the grenade gauntlets. Nitroglycerin storage, he noted. Dangerous. Lethal at close range if fully charged. Don't forget the objective, Katsuki, Izuku said calmly. It's capture or secure. Killing me disqualifies you, TCH. Bakugo stomped off toward the building. 5 minutes later. Outside the building, Izuku and Uraraka stood by the blueprints of the facility. Okay, Uraraka. Listen close. Izuku unrolled the map. He pointed to the 5th floor. The weapon is likely here. It's the most defensible position with a central pillar. Right, Uraraka nodded, looking nervous. So, Bakugo is going to come for you, isn't he? Yes. 100% probability. Izuku didn't look worried. He looked focused. He has an inferiority complex regarding me. He interprets my presence here as a personal insult. He will abandon the objective to hunt me. That's intense, Uraraka gulped. So what do? We split up, Izuku said. What? But you can't fight him alone. He's really strong. Izuku looked at her. Through the lenses of his mask, his eyes were sharp. I know how strong he is. I've watched him for 10 years. I know his right hook. I know his timing. I know how he breathes before he shoots. Izuku tapped the earpiece of his hood. I will draw his fire. I will engage him on the lower levels. While he is distracted trying to murder me, you will use your zero gravity to float up the exterior wall or the elevator shaft, whichever is unguarded. You will locate the weapon, and then you wait for my signal. Do not engage Ida. Ida is fast, but he is linear. If you get caught, retreat. But Midoriya. Uraraka clenched her fists. Can you beat him? Izuku checked his gloves. He tightened the straps. It's not about beating him, Izuku said. It's about winning the war. But yes. I can take him. Part 3 First Contact. Start. The buzzer sounded. Izuku and Uraraka entered through a window on the first floor. The interior was dim, a maze of concrete pillars and corridors. They moved silently. Izuku took point, moving heel to toe to dampen his footsteps. Bakugo won't wait, Izuku thought. He's impatient. He'll want to end this immediately. He paused at a corner. He held up a hand. Uraraka froze. Izuku pointed to his ear, then to the ceiling. Footsteps. Heavy ones? Coming down the stairs fast. Go, Izuku whispered to Uraraka. Take the side route. Now. Uraraka nodded and slipped away into the shadows. Izuku stood in the center of the corridor. He took a deep breath. He unlocked the safety on his mind. Come on, Kaken. Deku! Bakugo rounded the corner like a runaway train. He didn't assess the room. He didn't check for traps. He saw green, and he fired. He launched himself forward with an explosion from his palms, closing the distance in a blink. Die! He swung his right arm. A massive, explosion-enhanced hook aimed straight for Izuku's temple. In the observation room, the class gasped. He's gonna kill him! Kirishima yelled. But Izuku didn't move backward. He moved forward. He stepped inside the arc of the swing. He ducked his head 3 inches, a calculated minimum. The explosion detonated harmlessly over his left shoulder, singeing his hood but missing his body. Bakugo's eyes widened. He had overcommit. His right side was wide open. Izuku didn't punch. He grabbed Bakugo's outstretched right arm with both hands, pivoted his hips, and used Bakugo's own momentum against him. He slammed Bakugo into the concrete floor. Crack! It wasn't a gentle judo throw. It was a combat takedown. Bakugo bounced off the floor, gasping for air. Izuku stood over him. He didn't look triumphant. He looked disappointed. You always lead with the right, Izuku said, his voice amplified slightly by his mask. And you scream before you attack. It gives away your position. Bakugo scrambled back, coughing, looking up at Izuku with pure shock. You! Bakugo's voice trembled with rage. You read me? I've been taking notes on you since we were 4, Katsuki, Izuku said calmly. Did you think I was writing fanfiction? I was writing a strategy guide, Bakugo roared. He blasted the floor to get back on his feet, creating distance. Don't mock me. Bakugo fired a volley of explosions. Izuku didn't tank them. He moved. He vaulted over a pillar. He slid under a pipe. He moved like water flowing around rocks. He's angry, Izuku analyzed as he dodged a blast that scorched the wall. His aim is getting sloppy. He's relying on splash damage. Uraraka, Izuku spoke into his comms, his voice steady despite the explosions around him. Status? I'm on the 3rd floor. Her voice crackled back. I think I'm clear. Ida is talking to himself on the 5th floor. Something about being a villain? Good. Keep moving. I have the target engaged. Part 4, The Escalation. Bakugo stopped firing. He stood at the end of the hallway, panting. Smoke curled from his hands. You're not using it, Bakugo growled. Izuku stood 20 feet away. Using what? Your quirk. That fancy power you used to throw the ball. You think you're too good to use it on me? Bakugo was shaking. It was humiliation. To be thrown by Deku without a quirk? It was worse than losing. I don't need it for this, Izuku said. It wasn't an insult, it was a fact. Using one for all at close range in a confined space risks structural collapse. It's illogical. Illogical? Bakugo screamed. He reached for the pin on his grenade gauntlet. In the observation room, All Might stood up. Young Bakugo. Don't. Those are stored up. He won't die if he dodges. Bakugo yelled back at the cameras. He pulled the pin. Click. The world turned white. A massive blast of fire roared down the corridor. It consumed everything. The walls blackened. The glass in the windows shattered. Midoriya! All Might shouted. The smoke billowed, thick and choking. Bakugo panted, grinning wildly. Gotcha. But as the smoke cleared, the corridor was empty. There was a hole in the ceiling. Bakugo looked up. What? Part 5, The Verticality. Izuku was on the ceiling. Or rather, he was clinging to the exposed rebar of the hole he had just punched through the floor of the 2nd level. Moments before the blast hit, Izuku had made a choice. Threat level, critical. Evasion impossible on the x-axis. Solution, y-axis. He had channeled one for all. Not 100%. He dialed it back. He tried to remember the sensation of the egg not breaking. 5%. Just in the legs. He had jumped straight up, smashing through the concrete above him just as the fire engulfed the space below. Now, he pulled himself up onto the second floor. His leg was throbbing. 5% was still a strain on his unconditioned bones, but it wasn't broken. He's insane, Kirishima whispered in the monitor room. He dodged a nuke by going upstairs. It was a calculated risk, Momo Yayorozu noted, her eyes glued to the screen. He realized the blast wave would travel horizontally. He utilized the building's weakness. Down below, Bakugo realized what had happened. He blasted himself up through the hole, landing on the second floor. Stop running! Bakugo shrieked. Izuku stood in the center of the room. He checked his capture tape. I'm done running, Katsuki. Izuku assumed a fighting stance. But it wasn't the trembling stance of a scared child. His feet were wide. His hands were up. Come and get me, Bakugo charged. This time, he didn't swing wide. He used his explosions to propel himself in a zigzag, moving faster than the eye could track. He's adapting, Izuku noted. Good. Bakugo appeared behind Izuku. Die. He fired an explosion at Izuku's back. Izuku sensed the heat. He spun. He didn't dodge. He tanked it. He crossed his arms, the reinforced Kevlar taking the brunt of the blast. The force slid him backward, his boots carving grooves in the floor. His sleeves were smoking, his skin underneath burned, but he stood firm. He grabbed Bakugo's arm through the smoke. Is that all? Izuku asked. Bakugo froze. Izuku twisted. He didn't throw Bakugo this time. He pulled him close. He brought his knee up. Thwack. A solid knee strike to Bakugo's diaphragm. Bakugo gagged, the air leaving his lungs. He doubled over. Izuku whipped out the capture tape. In one fluid motion, he looped it around Bakugo's right wrist, then his left. Damn you! Bakugo wheezed, trying to spark an explosion. Izuku tightened the tape. He kicked Bakugo's legs out from under him, forcing him to the ground. He placed the boot on Bakugo's back. Capture tape applied, Izuku said into his comms. Villain neutralized. The silence in the room was absolute. Bakugo lay on the floor, cheek pressed against the concrete. He wasn't moving. He wasn't screaming. He was in shock, defeated. By Deku. In hand-to-hand combat. Why? Bakugo whispered. You were nothing. Izuku looked down at him. He didn't gloat. He knelt down, bringing his mask close to Bakugo's ear. I was never nothing, Kaken. You just refused to see me. You were so busy looking at the summit, you didn't notice the climber right behind you. Izuku stood up. Uraraka. Phase 2. Part 6, The Payload. On the 5th floor, Uraraka was hiding behind a pillar. Ida was pacing around the weapon, a papier-mâché bomb. Mwahaha! Ida laughed stiffly. I am the most evil of villains. I have cleaned this room thoroughly to ensure the bomb is dust-free. No hero can stop me, Uraraka. Izuku's voice came in her ear. Bakugo is down. I'm coming to you. He's down? Uraraka squeaked. You beat him? Ida's ears perked up. Hero. I hear you. Ida zoomed toward her pillar. I, the villain, have detected your presence. Uraraka panicked. Midoriya. He found me. I'm 1 floor below you, Izuku said. I need you to make the weapon float. Can you touch it? I can't get close. He's too fast. Okay. Plan B. Get to the window. The window? Just do it. Uraraka ran. Ida chased her. You cannot escape, hero. Uraraka reached the window. I'm here. Hold on tight. Below them, on the 4th floor, Izuku looked at the ceiling directly under where the weapon was located according to the blueprints. He took a deep breath. One for all. He didn't need 100%. But he needed enough to break through reinforced concrete and create a shockwave. 30%. Just for a second, he clenched his right fist. The glove groaned under the pressure. Green lightning crackled around his arm, arcing wildly. Smash! He punched the ceiling. Boom! The entire floor of the fifth room erupted upwards. The concrete shattered into a million pieces. Ida, who had been chasing Uraraka, lost his footing as the floor beneath him buckled and exploded. What in the name of? The shockwave threw Ida backward. Debris flew everywhere. Through the hole in the floor, Izuku rocketed upwards, riding the momentum of his own punch. He landed in the center of the room, amidst the dust and chaos. Ida was sprawled on the ground, disoriented. The weapon was teetering on the uneven floor. Uraraka! Now! Izuku commanded. Uraraka, who had braced herself by the window, pointed her fingers. She hadn't touched the weapon, but she touched a large piece of debris flying toward Ida. Release! She dropped the debris in Ida's path, blocking him as he tried to recover. Izuku sprinted. He didn't use a quirk. He just ran. He tagged the weapon. Secure! Izuku yelled. The buzzer sounded. Hero team wins! All Might's voice cracked over the speakers. Izuku slumped against the bomb, sliding down to the floor. His right arm was trembling violently. It wasn't broken, but the muscles were screaming from the 30% output. Ow, he muttered. Uraraka ran over to him. Deku! That was terrifying. And amazing. Izuku gave her a thumbs up with his left hand. We did it. Part 7, The Anatomy of Victory. The monitor room was silent as the 4 students returned. Bakugo walked in last. He looked like a ghost. His eyes were glazed over. He didn't look at anyone. He went to the corner and slumped against the wall. All Might cleared his throat. He looked at Izuku, then at Bakugo. Well, that was certainly decisive. Now, who can tell me who the MVP of this battle was? Momo Yayorozu raised her hand immediately. It was Midoriya, sir. Oh? Why not Ida or young Uraraka? Because Midoriya orchestrated the entire engagement, Momo said, her tone analytical and impressed. He accurately predicted Bakugo's behavior. He utilized a diversionary tactic to separate the enemy team. He minimized damage to his partner. He used the environment to counter a superior firepower. And finally, his capture of the villain was executed with flawless CQC, close-quarters combat, technique. She looked at Izuku. However, I must deduct points for the final maneuver. Destroying the floor of a building containing a nuclear device is incredibly risky. If the payload had been volatile, you might have detonated it. Izuku stepped forward. He pulled off his mask. His face was sweaty, his hair a mess, but his expression was serious. You're correct, Yayorozu-san, Izuku said. The structural damage was a gamble. However, I calculated the blast radius of my punch to be directed upwards, away from the weapon's core. Also, based on the villain's monologue, I deduced the weapon was stable enough for movement. But you're right. In a real scenario, I should have cleared the floor first. The class stared. He's agreeing with her? Usually, students defended their actions. Izuku was dissecting his own victory with cold logic. Also, Izuku added, looking at Bakugo in the corner. The villain team failed because of a complete lack of cohesion. Individual skill means nothing if you can't work as a unit. Bakugo flinched. All right. All Might clapped his hands, trying to break the tension. Excellent analysis. Now, let's move to the next match. Everyone, take notes. Part 8, The Shift. The day ended. The sun bathed the school in orange light. Izuku walked toward the school gates. He was tired. His arm ached. Deku. Izuku stopped. Bakugo stood by the gate. He wasn't crying, but his eyes were red. He was shaking. You! Bakugo's voice cracked. You were hiding it. All this time. You were laughing at me. I wasn't hiding anything, Izuku said, turning to face him. I didn't have a quirk until the exam, Kaken. That's the truth. Bullshit. Bakugo yelled. You don't just get a quirk overnight. And you don't learn to fight like that overnight. I learned to fight, Izuku said, stepping closer, because I had to survive you. Bakugo recoiled as if slapped. I spent 10 years analyzing heroes because I wanted to be one, Izuku said. I spent 10 months carrying trash on a beach until my hands bled because I wanted to be strong enough to stand here. I didn't trick you. I outworked you. Izuku looked at his hand. You have an amazing quirk, Katsuki. You're talented. You're strong. But today? You were weak. Not because of your power, but because of your pride. Bakugo stared at him. The old Deku would have apologized. The old Deku would have chased after him. I'm not going to apologize for winning, Izuku said. And I'm not going to be your punching bag anymore. He adjusted his backpack straps. I'm going to be the #1 hero. If you want to beat me, you better stop pouting and start training. Because right now, I'm ahead of you. Izuku turned and walked away. Bakugo stood there. Tears of frustration finally spilled over. He grit his teeth so hard they creaked. Damn it! Bakugo whispered. Damn it! He screamed at the setting sun. But Izuku didn't turn back. He kept walking. From the shadows of the school entrance, All Might watched. He smiled. You are strong, young Midoriya, All Might whispered. But be careful. Strength breeds challenge. Izuku walked into the crowd of commuters. He felt a hand on his arm. Midoriya! It was Uraraka. Anita. That was harsh, Uraraka said softly, looking back at Bakugo. It was necessary, Izuku said. He needs to break before he can rebuild. It's basic metallurgy. You treat people like science projects sometimes, Uraraka joked, though she looked a little impressed. Only the difficult ones, Izuku smiled. A real smile. Now who wants Katsudon? I'm buying. I shall partake. Ida announced. I must refuel after my defeat. Me too. Uraraka cheered. As the three of them walked away, the dynamic of Class 1A had irrevocably shifted. The nervous, stuttering boy was gone. In his place was a tactician, a fighter, and a leader, and the world was starting to notice.